Okay, in this section of the videos, I'm going to show how to set up the RVT or real-time runtime virtual texture for fixing up primarily dirt roads. This won't have much consequence for sealed roads, as they tend to be okay, although they can suffer from exactly the same problems. The problems being, as we can see here, I'm going to slow down a bit, the mesh, the spline mesh, the road mesh, not sitting on the ground properly due to the way the landscape deforms, and you can go into here and select this section and deform to the cows come home, and it still will not end up right. It'll probably end up bulging up over here and covering this road, and particularly in intersections where you've got a couple of roads coming in. If this was intersected with this one and the meshes actually were connected, so they ran into each other, and particularly if you've got a change in elevation, if it's coming down a hill and then you've got a road cutting at the side, it's impossible to get all of the meshes to sit happily on the ground and not be having problems with floaty bits, or like we see up here with the landscape poking through here and there. It looks horrible. You can see even here it's hovering up above here. The landscape does not deform, or there's just not enough polygons in the landscape to make it deform as much as the spline will deform the actual road. Now this is an extreme case, as you can see. It's pretty up and down. Having said that, once I show you how to set this up, this is going to become a perfectly smooth road when we can actually take the meshes, the road meshes, out of the equation. So I've got my basic roads set down. I've deformed the landscape, and I have issues with it. Again, this is only for dirt roads, so we'll just go with that. What you're going to need to do this is you're going to need your own dirt road static mesh. This one has currently got no material assigned to it. It doesn't matter which road mesh you get. I think there's only one actual mesh that has different materials applied to it. So you'll need your own road mesh. Then you'll need to get yourself a material for it. I've already got what I call my road master material, which is set up for RVTs, and inside this is a vanilla road material. Dirt road new _01 is the material, and I've just made a duplicate copy of it and modified it for my own means. I have added in this Y tiling, and that is purely to remove some of the more obvious repetition in the tiling of the normal map along the road. It just stretches it out. You can stretch it out or shrink it a bit if you want, to suit whatever however you like it. And some of the repetition in some of the normal maps can be a little bit obvious. I'll show you that in a minute. I've made a mask. So I have a mask that I made in GIMP that will mask out the gravel edges of the road. So there's no gravel edges. All I'm going to ever see is the actual tyre tracks, which is what I want. I don't want anything but the tyre tracks on the road. Ultimately, I want one single normal map, and this mask obviously, to be able to build any unsealed road on any surface, and it works quite well. So the other things we have in here is we have specular and roughness adjustments, just to adjust how the tyre tracks look in comparison to the surface that they're actually going across, to make them either fade away or highlight them a little bit so that they're visible. A normal boost is purely there to adjust how heavy the normal map comes through on the terrain. Some surfaces might not want so much more normal boost, like a hard packed gravel road. You probably don't want too much normal coming through, whereas a sand road, which I'm going to show in a minute, is you're going to want a fair bit of normal boost because tyres sink into sand. One thing I've learned through doing all this is that normal static texture or statics textures, the normal maps, or all of them I think, are all in tangent space, but particularly for this we need to have the normal map in world space when it goes to be rendered onto the landscape. That's another reason, and that difference is another reason why we're doing this. The other problem, apart from the static mesh being an issue sitting down nicely, is that the difference between normal space and world space in the normals, let's go to this. This is a really good menu to use to check stuff. If we go to world normals, now it kind of looks okay, like on some areas. Actually, it's not great. This colouring, well, actually, it's not too bad, really. It's not too bad. Considering this doesn't have any texture or any normal put on it at the moment, it's not too bad. But you will notice that when it goes up the hills, you'll get changes in this normal value when you go over certain areas. Like you can see that the normals for the world depends on what side of a hill you're on, things like that. If the road was running up this way and it stayed pink when it was going over this sort of greeny bluey colour on the world, that would render differently, and you can get issues where the road doesn't render as dark or light as the landscape, and this is common throughout the entire game. You can see it sticks out like a sore thumb everywhere. It doesn't render the same because of the fact that one's tangent space and one is world space. They just don't render the same. So that is also the other primary reason why we're getting the RVT set up. So get yourself a road master material set up like this. The original material output disconnected, but leave it in. It's not going to be used, but you have to leave it in there. And once you've got a road master, you can then make yourself a material instance of it, and I'm not even going to rename it for the purposes of this, but I've got an instance of it. Put that in my map folder that I'm working on, move it, and then open up your road that you've got yourself, your road mesh, and then apply the material to the road mesh. Save that. You've now got an RVT happy material applied to your road mesh. Okay, the next change we have to make is to the master material, because as you've seen from previous videos, this is the master material again based on a vanilla material. We have to make some changes up at this end of it, and I will show you because I'm going to use this one as my reference. So we'll get this looking at, and we'll get this one over here, and we're going to do a quick bit of modification to this. So this is exactly the same material, except it's got these extra VT stuff written in, because I haven't gotten around to putting this stuff in my master material yet. One day. So if we go to these last two nodes, the generate distance based tessellation, we need to break them and separate that from the rest of the line for the minute. Then what we need to do is we need to make these two chunks of stuff. So everything that the material's doing is going to get written to a runtime virtual texture. That's what this output is. Everything that you see on the landscape is then going to be read from that same virtual texture onto the landscape so we can see it. And that's how it works. I mean, I don't know actually how it works, but that's what I've been told by smart people. Anywho, we'll quickly make this stuff. We need a get, and do this get material attributes, do it separately. Don't pull off here and do it, because it gives you the wrong node. Get material attributes. Now in this one we have to make some adjustments, which you will see in here. There's these output pins we need to add in. So we got base color, then we need to go specular, and I'm only doing this to keep it in order so it's neat, and roughness and normal, and we can plug that into that. And then I'll bring it down a bit. And then we need an absolute world position. It's not actually called that, it's just called world position, and it's not even called that in the list, but it's labeled on the box as, on the node, as absolute world position. From that we need a mask component because we want to, or component mask, because we want to mask out the Z value, which is B, so RG and turn on B. RGB is XYZ, and we need the Z axis, or the Z axis, sorry. What am I talking American? We need the Z axis for the height, so it's going to go into world height. So then we can get the runtime virtual texture output, which is just typing virtual, and we've got our texture output here, and we've also got our sample, which is the other one down here. So we get our texture output, and we're going to base color to base color, specular to specular, roughness to roughness, and the normal we have to transform the vector from tangent space to normal space, and then our mask is going to go into our world height. That is our right node. This should be read. Okay, let's save that. Right. So what we can do is now we can now collect that, hit C, comment it, and go VT write. So we're writing to the virtual texture in this box. The next bit we need to do is need the runtime sample, so we get virtual runtime texture sample, and we need a make material attributes, and we're going to plug these together. Base color, specular, roughness, normal, and that is it for those, and we're going to comment those. VT read, and now the VT read is what gets plugged back into the material output for the landscape. Okay, now this is complaining because it doesn't have a texture sample. It's missing a textual input, a virtual texture. We haven't made it yet, so don't worry. If we go to this one, you can see this is referencing one from the other map that I've got this for looking at. We don't need that anymore. We can leave this up here for the moment. Go back to our working folder. So we've modified our terrain texture. We now have to make our virtual textures, which is right-click, material textures, runtime virtual texture, and we're going to call this VT underscore some reference for the map you're working on, and height. And then we're going to make another one. Don't copy and paste these, just in case. And landscape, and that landscape one's actually going to be a color texture, so we're going to have a height texture and a color texture for this virtual textures. Go into landscape and go all the way down to virtual texture. Join virtual texture, open that up twice, and we're going to put in the height texture first, then we're going to put in the landscape texture, then we're going to go up to our terrain mask, we're going to pluck that out, and we're going to go to our texture sample, which was complaining. Now this wants the landscape, the color texture sample, because it's the landscape color. Drop that in there and save that and apply it. It'll it'll do that thing where it goes black, because at the moment it has no reference of what to actually make the texture from. So let's save all at this point. So it needs something to reference from, which is a big box we need to put into the level. So runtime virtual texture volume is the volume that it'll be referencing to work out what to actually do. Go to the first one you put in. We now need to bind this to the actor. So we're going to bind that to the landscape actor. We're going to put in the virtual height texture in this first one, and we're going to set the bounds. That will create the box that is bounding the entire volume of your landscape. So now it knows what to actually render. You'll see here that, oh, there it is, it's just refreshed. Now this is I need to make some adjustments in here because that's not a height texture, that's a color texture. We'll get to that. The second one, we want to do the same. We want to bind it to the landscape, and we want to put in the landscape color texture, and then set the bounds, and it'll do exactly the same thing. Alright, now we go into these textures. This is the height texture. This is where you can, if you change this value here, if you up this value, make it higher, more tiles in the texture, you will get a higher definition or more resolution to your virtual texture, which can be quite good. I'm going to leave it at 8 at the moment, so we can play with that later. This is the height map, so we need to come in here to this content and change it to world height. Okay, that's the only change you need to make for the height texture, unless you want to fiddle with the resolution. Save that. The landscape one is it's by default is a color texture, so there's nothing to actually do in the landscape one, so that's fine. What we're going to do now is we're going to go and, did I do these ones? I did those ones, yes, they're now refreshed. Okay, I can't remember where I am now. The next one I have to do is that's right. Okay, so let's look at the road. Okay, landscape splines. We'll pick up all of the control points and lift them up in the air. And as you can see, we've got nothing. It's just the sandy surface. Now you can also see how blurry that is. It's quite blurry. So this is where we can go into these textures and increase this resolution. So I'm going to go up to 10, and you can see how it's ramping up the resolution. If you go down, it's quite a lot. So I just have mine set to 12. I just do that. I don't know. It's if you're on a much bigger map, obviously, even if you set it to 12, you're going to lose a little bit of resolution. But having said that, this is pretty high resolution as it stands. You know, we've got a lot of resolution there. It's pretty good. But of course, we don't have our normal map projecting yet. So what we've got to do is we've got to go into the hang on, let me get up. We need to select one of these segments and get all the segments of our road, and we need to now go down and add the virtual texture drawing to this as well. As with the landscape, we need to add 2 elements, and then we need to add the height map, and we need to add the color map. Okay, so they're done. Now what we've got to do is, as you can see, I've now got a normal map that has only got the tire tracks showing. There's no gravel here or in the middle or on these edges. There's no gravel normal on the edges. It's still sandy sand. However, I haven't changed my normal map in the material yet, so what I'm going to do is go in here and do that. I'm going to turn all these on so that we've got our adjustments. I'm going to turn on the normal map, and then I'm going to go to my normal map texture, and grab it and dump it in there. I'm going to save that, and then now you can see we've got this nice tracks in the sand and no gravel, because, as you know, like I said, this has got normals on the outsides of the tracks, which I did not want to have on here. Otherwise you'll end up with gravel normals, and then it'll suddenly stop and you'll go to sand. It just looks really dumb. So this is done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the normal boost, because this is sand, so it needs a little bit of a normal boost, and I can't remember which way to do it. Oh, I'm doing the roughness. What am I, idiot? I can't remember which way I went. Oh, that's right, yeah. So if you go up in the normal boost, you're fading it out, and if you go down, you're fading it in. Having said that, you can get to a point where it's a bit too much, you know, like I think I had mine set to like minus 0.2. I think that gave me a nice gravelly look. Now, having said that, if I just grab this, I'm just going to grab this one and shove it back a bit so that it actually goes under the road. Then we can see where this rock texture is. You can see the tyre tracks, and even on the grass you can see how the normals are being rendered onto the landscape, regardless of the material that you're putting them on, which is pretty cool. So when you're building a road, think about when you're going from a sandy or very loose, soft soil or whatever you're doing to a very hard surface like rock, or not so much rock, you're going to leave tyre tracks on rocks, but if you go to a packed gravel, make sure that you have an end of the road there somewhere where you can end on the soft stuff and then continue on the hard stuff, so that you can then go in and change you can even make a separate instance of that material again, so that you can change the normal boost for the soft and the hard. You know, for instance, in my map here I have a dirt road and I have a sand road, because I've got roads driving over beaches and I've got roads driving over inland hard packed gravel road. The other thing you'll notice is over here is that we've got perfectly, hang on, let me get this. This is where once you've laid out your road and you've got this working, I found the best idea is if you lift, oops, hang on, undo that. If you save this, we don't need it anymore. I'm going to go pick up all of the control points. This is one thing I found messing around with this stuff. Oh, where can we see it? Oh, I can see it here, I suppose. If you lift up, oh, I can go down there. If you move too far away from the landscape with your static mesh, right, you'll lose it all. Okay, so what I do is I just put them just under the ground like that, so I can still see these control points, so that if I ever have to mess with the road, I can easily come along and find the damn things without having to search underneath the terrain for where the road is. You just search by them and you can pick up all them good control points, or then you can go segments. You can easily pick up the entire road just with one of these things. So there you go. It produces nearly the perfect road, and as you can see, there is no issues with terrain deformation, fooling with stuff or messing with stuff. It just wraps perfectly on to the terrain surface. I think that's about it. I'm going to save that. I think that's about it, actually. Yeah, that's probably all you need to know. Like I say, just when you're doing this, don't forget about adding in the virtual textures in the terrain. Don't forget about adding in the normal map, so you make sure you got your right normal map and all that. That's right. Don't forget about don't forget about adding in the virtual textures for the road segments. Don't forget about that. And it's from virtual texture. These ones, what you're doing here is you want from virtual texture here, and in the landscape you want drawing main pass always. What else we've got to do? You've got to make sure that you set particularly your height map to world height, otherwise they'll both come out as color maps and it'll confuse you. And play around with your texture resolution, but basically you're probably going to crank it up to 11 or 12 like I've done. What else is there? And also making your changes to your terrain material so that you've got the virtual texture stuff put in there, and also your road material, which will be your road master instance, your road master material, where you've got to put the virtual texture stuff in there as well. And you know what I'm going to do right now? I'm going to change this so I don't have to ever bother with it again. Put my texture in there, apply, save, and now I don't ever have to worry about changing that ever again. It's well worth doing this. Absolutely well worth doing this. I can't stress that enough. That'll do for this video. I do have a little run through on a different map of going pi and checking out the roads, so that'll be the next little video. It'll be just a quick one. Actually, you know what? No, I'll tack it onto the end of this because it's only a couple of minutes. Minimize that, maximize this. Okay, so I'm going to go in and we're going to go and have a look at it. So, as you can see, it's just seamless. Like, the tyre tracks aren't overwhelming on the dirt. They shouldn't be, so they look pretty good. Let's go down and have a look at the sandy stuff. It's looking pretty good. There's a bit of the hitch there in the texture, but it's not too bad. That could be my normal map. Again, not being perfect. And then down to sand. I mean, yeah. There is a bit of a, I noticed that there. There's a slight line going across there. But you know what? I don't care. It otherwise looks pretty damn good.